Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a great show for you. We're going to be chatting about a little bit of an extension of our last episode, and that was how to manage client emotions. We're going to talk about actually the process of maybe managing other agent emotions and the myriad of things that would come along with that, from building relationships with them to some more detail on being a resident versus a dissonant leader, how to identify that in the other agent, understanding their motive. So really, how to build kind of that non-adversarial real estate business that's going to help build some longevity into your career. We've got a great guest on tap again today, Dr. Roger Hall, business psychologist, executive coach, and public speaker, and a multi-time author. And we like to poke fun a little bit every once in a while about a self-professed neuro nerd. So how you doing today, Dr. Hall?
I'm doing well, and none of that has changed. I'm still a neuro.
We should say, and friend of the show. We should put that on there as well.
I'm happy to take that one.
Awesome. Well, before we get started with all this great information, just real quick, for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jared Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead at MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the Perfect Real Estate Business, where we're looking to reinvent real estate. There's been a lot of changes over the years, many more to come. And we've introduced a lot of things, in large part with partnership with Dr. Hall in regards to business coaching, life coaching. And then we bring in mentoring and training to build longevity into your career. And then some of the other things that agents are really looking for in the way of lead generation, or maybe even possibly white labeling your business. But with that, so if you have any questions about the Perfect Real Estate Business, feel free to reach out to us, obviously, after the show. But other than that, we'll bring Dr. Hall in and chat about kind of the need that needs to be there for us to really build rapport and relationship with the agent on the other end of the other side of the aisle, the other side of the transaction.
Sounds good. Where would you like to begin?
Yeah, I guess maybe like a case scenario of the non-adversarial versus the relationship. A lot of agents, they feel like in order to really benefit their client, they've got to come in hard, come in hot, and just throwing punches. And the more I negotiate, that kind of behavior in my mind, I can understand a little bit of their mission to help serve their client, but I think ultimately I see quite often it being a little self-defeating, certainly from a long-term perspective, because other agents in the industry just kind of get fed up with that. And I think long-term, what is that saying? Attract more bees with honey. Is that? Oh, I'm sure I butchered that, but
More flies with honey than with vinegar.
excuse me. There
Yes.
you go. So, what's your thoughts on that, just generally speaking?
Yeah, I think it's right. Somebody told me that actually vinegars actually does attract more flies than honey, but
You get
so,
the
so
idea.
the analogy breaks down. But I think the concept is right, that and I think we talked about it last time, that if you're just going for a short-term gain, not a long-term career, absolutely be super competitive. If you're looking to make as much money as you can at the expense of other agents, and you don't care about the relationships you have, absolutely be as competitive as possible, and they'll hate you for it. They may begrudgingly respect you, but they won't really respect you. And I think people go back to that quote from The Godfather. Which would you rather be, liked or loved or respected? And I think, or loved or feared. And he said feared. Let's put a little bit different language on it. Would you rather be liked or respected? I absolutely go for respected all day long. But if you're a jerk, they may respect that you're going to make your client an immediate gain. They won't respect you on a host of other topics. So it goes back to what we talked about last time, which is the abundance mentality, the mentality that there's plenty of money to be made. It doesn't all need to be made on this one transaction. And if you view it in such a way that you're going to have to beat the other person in the head in order to get your maximum gain, in the long run, you will lose business.
Yeah, I think the, hopefully obvious, but may not be obvious is, hey, you're going to have to deal with this agent that you just pummeled in the last transaction, right? You found a snaky way to, you didn't get him on the initial offer, but you got him on the RE10. So the inspection, right? You just came in and, kind of sideswiped him. And now, that agent's going to remember that, however long later, months, years later, when that same agent has another listing and they see that agent coming at them, they've got to watch out. The listing agent's got to watch out for their client's best interest, and knowing full well that the other agent on the other end is not going to, probably have a good outcome for their client.
Right. And if you have two relatively decent, on paper, they look roughly equal offers, the selling realtor will say, they're roughly equal offers. Do you want to have a more pleasant selling experience, or do you want to have it be a fight? Because, this particular realtor will make it into a fight.
Yeah. And, and that might have been the just perfect house for that buyer's agent. They've been looking for a long time, and it's just perfect place, and they may be a totally different person by that time. But that's a hard one to shake when that listing agent, that's what they remember.
Yeah. And they will. I mean, animals remember when they've been beat. Humans are certainly going to remember it.
Right.
And human beings are better at brooding about it than animals. Animals are far more likely to let it go, but not human beings.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. We could make other different use cases of why it is that we've got to have a long-term approach to our career, and let's talk about the benefits of understanding that agent on the other end. Actually, you know what? Let me back up just a little bit. So we talk about resonant leaders versus dissonant leaders. And
yes.
if we are a dissonant leader, and I don't want to belabor this too much because we've talked about it in prior podcasts, and I'll link those. But
learning is repetition. It's okay.
Yeah. So, and plus for the folks that haven't seen that, right? If I'm a resonant leader helping my client, I'm really good at kind of understanding my emotions and my thoughts and setting them aside such that I can help my my client as best I can. I'm a resonant leader versus a dissonant leader is kind of the opposite. Just, somebody that doesn't filter what they say and they just kind of throw things out there. Knowing as quickly as you can what that agent is on the other end sooner than later is going to help you identify whether this is going to be a successful transaction or not. Because if they can't even manage their own emotions, they're certainly going to struggle with managing their client emotions.
Yes. So let's run through those pieces again. And there are 4 of the pieces of emotional intelligence that have been put forward by Daniel Goleman and other researchers. And the first, and the way I put them out there is monitor and manage. So it's monitoring yourself, monitoring your own emotions. That is self-awareness. It's managing your own emotions. That's self-control. So I know I'm feeling, for example, angry. I'm managing my anger so it doesn't show and I don't, yell and cuss. That's the self, that's the monitoring and managing self. Monitoring and managing others. So monitoring others is empathy. That's the ability to accurately guess at a person's mental state, that they're guessing what the other person's thoughts or emotions are. And the better at guessing that you are, the more empathy you have. And it's also knowing those emotions and also imagining how you would feel if you had those emotions. So that's empathy. Resonance is when you're managing other people's emotions. So effective agents are able to join their clients in whatever emotional state they're in and draw them to a better emotional state. And if they're in a good emotional state, it's helping them continue that good feeling. And the example I give is a resonant leader. It's like pushing somebody on a swing. You're in sequence to the swinging. So you're pushing it just the right time so the person gets more of that good feeling. That's a resonant person. A dissonant person pushes at the wrong time and slows everything down and stops it, and everybody's head shakes. And so in the profession of real estate, a resonant realtor recognizes not only their client's emotions and the other agent's emotions and guessing at their thoughts and emotions, but they're also then able to manage that so that they can bring those negative emotions into a positive place. And those are advanced skills.
Yeah, I guess one of the ones I heard of recently is it was pretty clear, at least to me, and I'm an outsider looking in, is that the agent, the listing agent, and I hate to say it, sure appeared to need to get paid. This is an assumption. But I brought that up to the other agent I was talking about, and I'm like, it sounds to me like you've got to reassure them that this is being held together, because I kind of get the sense that other agent is fearful of and I don't know, maybe they just didn't want to report bad news back to their client. I don't know, whatever it was. But I was like, you gotta help that agent, as best I can tell, to reassure them that this is going to happen. Just because you had to push a couple of days doesn't mean it's going to go south, but help them work through that, and reassure them so they can reassure their client that this is going to close. Like, this came up and it was out of control, out of anybody's control. But
yes, if the other agent has compensation-itis, that they got to get paid, and if there's anything in other words, the other agent, we're just assuming here, needs the money more than they need their client to get a good house, then their motives are mixed, and they've in a sense they've broken their fiduciary, their trusted relationship with the client, that I will advocate for your best interest even to my harm. That's what fiduciary means. And if you've got so much compensation-itis that you're kind of going to throw your own client under the bus to make sure that this closes, that impairs your objectivity.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll back up a little bit, because that was an assumption, and I always hate making those. Let's just assume they didn't want to tell the client that this had to get pushed a few days.
Well, let's play with that one for a little bit more,
Sure.
because we talked about the importance of negotiation here. And with other agents, excessive desire is likely to get you, if you're an agent, or the other agent, in trouble. One of my favorite books on negotiation is called Negotiate This, and the subtitle is By Caring But Not That Much. And it's by a guy named Herb Cohen. He did strategic arms limitation talks with the Russians.
Oh, wow.
And multi-million-dollar media deals and hostage negotiation, all these different things. And what he said is that the more I want an outcome, the more impaired I get on my negotiation skill. So he always just had a flat fee. It was never a percentage, because he said, as soon as I put the percentage in there, then I started to get a little bit greedy, and then it impaired my judgment, and I'd get beat up all the time in negotiations. If it was just a flat fee, boom, 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 I was great at negotiation.
Yeah, so kind of give yourself that distance or space, which is helpful in any manner of things, right? And I was able to kind of see what potentially was going on, and help that agent say, hey, you need to give them some reassurance and how they might be able to share with their client, or to internalize it, so that they could process that.
Right. The more we become attached to an outcome, the more we desire this outcome, the more that desired outcome controls us and gets in our way and impairs our ability to be good negotiators. So if any of the people watching want to know a couple great books on negotiation, the first is the one I mentioned, Negotiate This, By Caring But Not That Much, by Herb Cohen. And then more recently, a book called Never Split the Difference, by a guy named Chris Voss, who was a FBI hostage negotiator. and here's a little side note. It is maddening for me to read Chris Voss's book because here's a guy who's at the peak of his craft. He's probably one of the world's best negotiators.
Okay.
And if you read it, he says, I pretty much got everything I learned about negotiation from the fields of counseling and psychology. I got a degree in counseling psychology, and I'm not a great negotiator. It's like, what did he get that I missed?
That's funny.
But what he's pointing at is that successful negotiation is all the things we've been talking about, which is understanding the other person's motivations, understanding what presses are on them. It really is, in his mind, all about empathy and understanding that. And then being able to have resonance, to be able to collect that other person's bad feelings and help them come to a solution that gets everybody what they want.
So is this any level of a, I don't, maybe this is a bad word, but it popped into my head, like a disassociation with not the activity, but your relationship to the activity? Is that a weird way to look at it?
You're onto something, but dissociation is such a it's such a emotion laden word. Tell me more what you mean, so
Maybe,
that I misanswer.
Maybe the better alternative word is a non-personalization to the activity, like not personalizing it, how it affects you. You're looking at your client, you're looking at the other agent, or you're looking at the other client on the other end, and you're not personalizing that.
Yes. So if we go back to Herb Cohen, the guy we talked about at the beginning, his mantra is I care, but not that much, which to me has become my life motto. I care, but not that much, which he describes as compassionate disinterest, in that you have compassion, that you care, but you're not connected to the outcome, which is kind of what you're saying. Is step back from that, and if you look at the Buddhist tradition, they call that non-attachment. If you look at the Judeo-Christian tradition, that's the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet, which means thou shalt not want things too much. So there's a lot of historical tradition, there's a lot of good evidence from the area of negotiation, that the less you desire something, the more successful you are. And one of the things that starting realtors see is they see, or any professional for that matter, any starting professional sees more seasoned professionals, and they go, gosh, they make it look so easy. And like, it's like, they go into that negotiation, it's like they don't care, and they can just ask for things and say things that I can't imagine me doing that. Well, that's because they got a bunch of money over the years and a bunch of experience. And so they know this one deal really isn't that big of a deal. And if they get it, great, more money for the bank account. If they don't get it, their kids are still going to eat, their mortgage is going to get paid, or they're going to, be able to buy a new Bentley. Whatever the issue is, they're not attached to the outcome, which I think is what you're talking about, that dissociation or that distancing.
Yeah, well, I see that being a learned behavior. Like, I have enough evidence that I don't need to be personally, too hyper personally attached to this, because it's going to be fine no matter which way it goes, because I've seen it go poorly and I've seen it go well, and I'd always lived, either way. Your introduction to me of the idea of I care, just not that much, has been, I hate to use the words life-changing, but it's really helped me in the process of any manner of things that I've done. Initially, my knee-jerk was, okay, I'm not caring enough, and I had to kind of struggle with that a little bit, because I did want to care. But I also noticed, exactly to your point, if I cared too much, then I was undoing any benefit that I could have otherwise received by pulling back just a little bit,
Yeah.
ultimately the outcome was better by me just removing my piece of that a little bit.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think I'll just explain my approach to it. When I was introduced to Herb Cohen by a professional colleague, and he said that phrase, "I care but not that much," I looked at him and I thought, "You are insane. What is wrong with you?" And it took me a few years really for me to kind of get really invested in that idea and realize that the reason he was able to handle rejection with such equanimity is he really embodied that. And I admired it, I aspired to it, and so I worked on it, and I've gotten better at it.
So it just occurred to me this way that if I really care on this side of the transaction and the other agent really cares on this side, and we can't unpersonalize it or disassociate or whatever word we want to use, we're escalating the activity
Yep.
and we're going to do this.
Yep.
But if one of us, or better yet, both of us can bring that down where we're just looking at the fiduciary responsibility for our client and we're like, hey, if this whole thing blows up, then everybody's going to hurt. You
Yeah.
know,
Everybody gets nothing.
every,
Which one of your topics you wanted to talk about was it, what did you call it? Cooperative negotiation? What was
cooperative thinking, gamified.
cooperative? Yeah. And so I want to introduce a topic here on game theory. And so if any of you saw the movie A Beautiful Mind, the protagonist, whose last name was Nash, he was a professor in England, and he had schizophrenia, but he's also the founder of this idea called game theory. And in the movie A Beautiful Mind, Ron Howard does a spectacularly good job of illustrating this with a pub scene in England. And so what you have is you have five guys walking into the pub, and they're all looking to get dates. And they're all relatively good looking guys, and they walk into the pub, and there are six women around the pub. And one of them is a stunner. She's not a 10, she's an 11. And so what happens is they all start converging on her like piranha on a piece of pork in the Amazon River. And what happens when they all converge on her is she rejects them all. She's overwhelmed, and what happens is all of the other women in the bar feel rejected because they didn't get any attention. And so then they're kind of like second choice. They feel awful, so they reject the guys later. So by everybody going after that idealized outcome, they lose not only the idealized outcome, but all the other opportunities. What game theory says is you're looking for a good enough outcome for everybody. And so the way Ron Howard illustrates it in the movie is these five guys walk in, they ignore the stunning woman and go to all the other pretty women individually. And they all end up on dates. So at the end of the night, everybody except for the stunning woman has a date, which is what everybody wanted in the first place. And so if we look at this in a business transaction, if you personally are looking for the idealized outcome, and the other person is also looking for their idealized outcome, guess what? You're probably going to have conflict, and then nobody's happy. So what game theory says is you need to find a good enough outcome for as many people as possible, and then everybody's desires are fulfilled, and then transactions continue to go forward. If it is, I'm going to get my best outcome at your expense, then you're probably not going to do a lot of business long term.
It's interesting that we're having this topic, especially now, because our market's getting super competitive again. And, we always get the buyers that say, I want this, that, and the other thing, right? And initially, right out of the gate, it's that perfect home at the perfect price with the perfect interest rate, right? I mean, it's just kind of what they want. And then
which has never, ever happened in the history of the world.
Right.
The end.
Right. So, you take these buyers to the market and you say, hey, here's our cards. But the cards that you're playing with are drastically different than a lot of the other buyers out there that want the exact same thing that you just told me you wanted. And by the way, their cards are amazing. I already see them because the listing agent's telling me these are cash buyers, waiving inspection or, whatever obnoxious things that they're doing. And then you get to go to your client, your buyer, and say, hey, look, this just is what the market is. You are positioned to buy a home. I think, sooner is always or is often better than later in real estate, just because home values just historically always go up. But what we might need to look at is that good outcome, that great outcome that you wanted. There's a lot of other people who are getting a great outcome for not a lot of homes in our market. So let's get you a good outcome. What things are we willing to kind of overlook, or I shouldn't say overlook, but
what are your must-haves and what are your want-to-haves?
Right.
And part of it is, and I guess again, this is not managing the other agent, because you really, you can help create a pleasant interaction with the other agent, but this is really managing your and your client's expectations, which are, is utopia possible? And if they believe utopia is possible, you as their agent are in for a pretty long, a pretty long interaction.
Yeah.
If they believe we're going to try to get, on a 1 to 100 scale, they want to be in the 90s at least. I think that's okay.
Yeah. Nobody's
getting 100. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, no, I will interject one thing I've noticed when the market was really hot during COVID. I got really good at helping my buyers buy properties, even if they weren't the ones with the best cards. Because I did a number of things. I had to build a relationship and confidence with the other agent, that I knew what I was doing and that my buyers could accomplish what they needed, that the sellers, whatever they needed. And it was, yes, it's often highest price. That's true. But sometimes it was a rent back. It was a high degree of confidence that they were going to get it. My buyers were going to buy it because they had a build job on the back end and they were going to get charged daily late fees if the buyer couldn't close. So I had to instill a sense of confidence that my lender was better in some way, shape, or form, or that, my buyers weren't going to wig out during the inspection process, whatever it was. So I'm just saying I had to build enough trust in that other agent and to manage the emotions that they were going to have to contend with their seller.
So and what you were able to do was manage the other agent, his or her emotions, to manage, by proxy, the other client's emotions. But what you just said there is, I was figuring out what are the other motivations that matter. And I'm going to structure the deal in such a way that it may not always be price. It may be time. It may be rent back. It may be, 18 other things. But figuring out what are those levers that you can flip that matter. And so then you don't have to, so that you don't have to flip the levers of your own client. So if your client and the other client have different priorities, then everybody can get their priorities met because they're complementary. So it takes a realtor who understands that level of thinking, the ability to empathize and imagine what the other person is thinking and feeling and what's driving them. That's what can create that, according to game theory, that good enough solution for everybody.
Yeah, and the other thing I've noticed too, and man, I don't want to talk about, experience is going to come out. Like I've been doing this long enough that experience is going to come out, but I don't want to make it sound too braggadocious or whatever, but just understanding the options and not feeling like, here's another one I see. Should I be talking to my buyers about a build job that is 3, 4, 5, 6 months out because it's the best thing for them, when I've seen other agents go, oh, well, that's not going to close for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Who cares?
It depends. It depends on, is urgency, is immediacy one of their priorities?
Is that the buyer's priority?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's never our priority when it comes to that.
Right. So you just figure out what's the priority, and then flip that lever.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so I'm just stating that kind of removing yourself a little bit, or as much as you can, for fiduciary responsibility, looking out for your client's best interest, can solve all kinds of problems. Because if you are the one that can say, hey, a 5-month build job they're better suited for that, and set aside, my need, if I have any at all, to have it done sooner or later, you could spend weeks or months trying to find that existing home and never find anything, and frustrate your client, and then they're gone.
Right. And yes. And I'm thinking about the things you're talking about now, which is how do you find out the other agent's motivations? Because the other agent motivation, if they've got compensationitis, or if they're inexperienced and fearful that this is going to fall through, or the last deal they had went sideways for X reason, and now they're super defended against X reason. If you understand that, and you're not going to get that in a formal interview or in a formal negotiation. Those are typically not things people let on to. But the more you interact with them and have sideways conversations, they will give you hints inadvertently about what their priorities are.
Yeah.
And so it requires you to listen very carefully to the other agent and what his or her motivations are.
Yeah. Instead of, hey, these are my client's motivations, these are my motivations, your motivations be damned, because their motivations are going to come into the picture. And certainly their client's motivations are.
Right. And there's this sense that in this negotiation process, everything is adversarial, and that we're going to be fighting about everything. Well, the less you make it adversarial, the more likely it is that some of their internal motivation will leak out. I'm going to tell a story, which is there was a winner and there was a loser on this one. But everybody walked away happy, which is Howard Hughes was working on a divorce settlement, and his soon-to-be ex-wife wanted X amount of money. And so he asked her, which is more important to you, to have it in a lump sum, or do you want to make sure you have guaranteed income for a certain period of time? And she says, I just want the guaranteed income. So he said, okay, well, let's just divide it, whatever the amount was, $1 million, over a certain number of years and how much you get per month. And guess what he did? He paid her with no interest. So if you take the lump sum, she could have invested it and got it with interest and made more money and had somebody else manage it. But the way she negotiated, she got what she wanted, which was, I want a secure payout over, the rest of my life. And so he said, how about we set up these monthly payments? And she said, great.
That was mutually beneficial.
So it was mutually beneficial.
Ultimately.
Now, in that example, clearly Howard Hughes won on money, but both left feeling good. So she did okay. She wasn't eating cat food. Okay, well, so she was okay for the rest of her life. Yeah. So what we have to figure out is what are the important variables that your clients and then the other agent's clients and the other agent, what are the variables that matter to them?
Yeah, well, I love that example because it wasn't a monetary benefit to her, but security, confidence of that income meant more than additional money. I'm sure her attorney was smart enough to say, hey, just so you know, you're leaving money on the table. You could do it. Well, I mean, I don't know.
Who knows what they said?
Or maybe they just wanted to get it buttoned up. Who knows? But yeah. I think your point is well taken, and everybody should embrace that. Is, you got to look at all facets of what's going on. We blew right through our half an hour goal, but just to kind of sum things up is, be that resonant leader and kind of detach a little bit, depersonalize, yourself, be a good fiduciarily responsible, agent for your client, and look at it from that perspective throughout the process, while looking for, win-wins all the way around is going to get you, a very long career rather than the short term, nobody wants to deal with that person because they're difficult to deal with, or things blow up, or whatever the case may be.
Let me end with an example. If you look at the ability to predict outcomes in baseball versus professional football, so Major League Baseball versus NFL football, for which sport is it easier to make predictions?
Football?
No. And one of the reasons, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons is how many professional football games are there a year?
Oh, there's less data.
There's less data. There's 16 professional football games a year for each team. How many Major League Baseball games? Hundreds, right?
Yeah.
So this teaches us that the more times you do the interaction, the less any interaction really matters. So if you lose out of 100 games, if you lose one, okay, we can bring it back. If it's 1 out of 16 or 1 out of 8 or 1 out of 3, then every one matters more.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's just button it up by saying, there is the most important is understanding how you think and monitoring, as Dr. Hall, teaches us very intelligently to monitor what we think so that we can manage it. And once we get good at doing that, then we can start to lean into how we help our clients better, how we work with other agents better. But if we can't get our handle around our emotions, our thinking, our behavior, it's almost a non-starter.
It is a non-starter. I mean, the first thing every great leader needs to do is monitor and manage him or herself.
I love it. Well, as always, Dr. Hall, amazing stuff. Let's make sure we get the folks get access to how they can contact you on your website, drrogerhall.com. If you want to get his books, obviously those are available. He's got a new book coming out, DIY Leader Brain, which I'm super excited. As I understand it, Dr. Hall, that's an advancement to the DIY Brain?
Yeah, it's the follow-up. Yeah.
Gotcha. Or yeah, that's what I meant to say. So
yeah.
Anyway, and then you've got a couple other daily, weekly things that folks can participate in?
Yes. So every Thursday I've got Roger's 2 Cents that comes out. Every day I've got a quote of the day called the Daily Dose of Mental Marinade. If you're interested in signing up, you can sign up on my website at drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com, or send an email to support@drrogerhall.com, and we'll get you added to the mailing list. You can follow me on Twitter, on X, on Facebook, and it's at Rogers 2 Cents.
Awesome. Well, great stuff, guys. And if you want to know more about the perfect real estate business and how to incorporate a lot, or if not all of this stuff into your real estate career, build that longevity, and just have a happier, healthier career than what you're seeing today, one of the main items that I like to talk about that I didn't mention earlier is that personalized, customized approach to your real estate business. We are not all the same. We are not all passionate about the same things. We're not all wired the same. So to jump on somebody else's coaching program and assume it's perfect fit for you just isn't the case. So that was another item that I really wanted to kind of just touch on real briefly. But if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out. But other than that, Dr. Hall, we'll just thank you again for jumping on.
Jared, I'm so grateful that you've invited me. I love doing these podcasts with you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Other than that, we'll wish you a blessed one. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Bye.